You know what I see these days, good men, sitting alone for years, not because they gave up, not because they're broken, but because they finally understood that being good wasn't good enough for a game that doesn't want to play fair. I've seen it happen in real time. The guy who showed up on time, the one who paid for dinner, who remembered birthdays, who stayed calm when things got loud. They weren't boring, they weren't weak, they just weren't chaotic enough to be considered exciting. And slowly, they stopped trying, not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. He wasn't chosen, not because he lacked value, but because his value was quiet, and the world now listens to noise. He watched her swipe left, then get ghosted by the next guy, then come back 6 months later with stories about how she's working on herself. And he smiled politely, said nothing, and walked away, not to prove a point, but to protect his peace. Dating today feels like playing poker at a rigged table. You know the house always wins, but they keep telling you to bet more, smile more, chase harder, be patient. The right one will come, but he's not gambling anymore, not when the price is his time, his energy, his identity, because that's what it costs now. To be in love, you give everything and get graded on whether or not you spark joy, whether you challenge enough, but not too much, whether you lead but still obey. And he's tired of dancing in a minefield. There was a time when effort mattered. Now effort gets labeled as too available. Kindness feels like weakness. Stability, boring. He's not mad. He's awake. Because somewhere between dating apps and self-love hashtags, relationships stopped being about connection. They became performance, and he didn't audition well. He was too real, too ready. They told him he was too much for being serious and not enough for being flashy. So he left. Not the room, not the app, the system. He logged out of the cycle where people collect hearts but forget the humans attached to them. And when he left, he didn't slam the door. He closed it quietly, like a man who knows what silence can give back. Alone isn't the enemy. Pretending is. He spent years pretending that he was fine with crumbs, that he didn't mind the delays, the mixed signals, the constant shifting of goalposts. He was patient, he was loyal, but he wasn't seen, and nothing is lonelier than being invisible while holding someone's hand. So now, he sits alone. Yes, but not empty, not bitter. He's rebuilding. Not for someone else, for himself. He wakes up when he wants, drinks coffee in silence, fixes old tools in the garage, says no without guilt, and in that quiet, he remembers who he was before he was told he had to be more to be loved. This isn't a sad story. It's a real one, because not every man wants to be a project, or a backup plan, or a placeholder until the chaos gets old. Some men just want peace, and they're willing to choose solitude to get it, even if the world calls that lonely, even if they're misunderstood, even if no one claps when they walk away. They don't need applause. They need clarity. He started to notice the patterns. The same conversations, the same compliments that meant nothing, the same questions asked with no real intent to know. People weren't dating to connect. They were dating to escape themselves. He felt like a placeholder, like an unpaid therapist, like a mirror that was only useful when it reflected back what someone wanted to see. He was done with that, because love, real love, should not feel like a subscription service where you're only valued as long as you're useful. He remembers the last date. She was beautiful, smart, well-spoken, but her phone never left the table, and her attention never stayed on him. He paid the check, walked her to the car, and drove home feeling emptier than if he had stayed in alone. That night, he realized something. He wasn't being rejected. He was being relieved. Every time he walked away from someone who didn't see him, he wasn't losing. He was escaping. Modern dating feels like investing in a company that has no product, no service, and no return policy. Just buzzwords, hype, and a lot of promises that fall apart after the third meeting. He used to blame himself. Maybe he wasn't exciting enough. Maybe he needed to be more assertive, or more chill, or more unpredictable. But now, he sees the truth. He was applying real effort to a system designed for performance, not partnership. It's not that women are the problem. It's that the system rewards chaos and punishes clarity. You say what you want, too intense. You show up consistently, too available. You offer stability, where's the spark? So he gave up trying to fit, not because he hates love, but because he refuses to make love a trick. He started to ask new questions. Not how can I win her over, but why do I feel like I have to? Not what's wrong with me, but why am I giving so much to people who give so little back? The answers weren't pretty, but they were honest. He had made peace with crumbs because he was told that was all good men get. That being nice meant being walked over. That being stable meant being boring. He doesn't believe that anymore. He no longer wants to be someone's escape. He wants to be someone's equal. But until he finds that, he'll walk alone with his dignity intact. Because walking alone with peace is better than walking with someone who makes you question your worth every step of the way. He doesn't scroll endlessly anymore. He doesn't chase replies. He doesn't explain why he's still single. He knows. He's single because he'd rather be alone than misunderstood. He's single because he stopped auditioning for roles he never agreed to play. He's single because he finally realized love should never feel like proving yourself. There's strength in stepping away before you forget who you are. And he was dangerously close to forgetting, smiling when he didn't want to, paying when he felt used, waiting when he wasn't wanted, texting just to keep the thread alive even when the connection was already dead. He used to think he needed closure. Now, he gives it to himself. He closes tabs, stops scrolling, logs out not because he's given up, but because he's choosing different. He wants a love that doesn't start with games and end with exhaustion. And if that love takes time, he's okay with that. Because he finally understands that time alone isn't wasted. It's invested into healing, into clarity, into rebuilding a self that doesn't bend for conditional affection. He no longer feels the need to explain himself, not to friends who ask why he's still single, not to family who drops hints about finding someone soon, not to strangers who assume solitude means sadness. Because now, he knows the difference between being alone and being lost. And he's neither sad nor lost. He's just finally clear. He wakes up without checking his phone, eats breakfast without thinking of someone else's schedule, drinks his coffee hot, not rushed, not cold from waiting too long to matter. He sits in the quiet, not because he has no one to talk to, but because he no longer needs noise to feel alive. The silence doesn't scare him. It centers him. He walks by couples now and smiles, not with envy, not with longing, but with peace, because he finally sees what he used to chase, and he doesn't need it anymore unless it comes without conditions. He's not looking for a savior. He's not trying to be one either. He wants something real. And real things take time. Real things don't demand you shrink. He knows love isn't supposed to hurt. It's not supposed to feel like walking on glass just to keep things smooth. It's not supposed to confuse you, drain you, or make you question your worth every time they pull away. Love is supposed to feel like a return home, not a relocation of your entire identity. And until he finds that, he's fine, right where he is. This isn't loneliness. It's freedom. Freedom from chasing approval, from rewriting texts, from reading between the lines of someone who doesn't want to be clear. Freedom from the echo chamber of maybe and someday, and almost he doesn't live in almost anymore. He lives in enough. He's enough. Without validation, without the relationship status, without being someone's next chapter, he doesn't want to be the reason someone heals. He wants to be met by someone who already did, so they can build something from wholeness. Not holes. They might call him cold, but they don't know how warm it feels to finally live in truth. They might say he's afraid, but they haven't seen the courage it takes to walk away from comfort that costs you your identity. They might say he gave up, but they never stayed long enough to know what he gave in the first place. Because this man wasn't weak. He just loved in a world that stopped recognizing real love. And when he realized he couldn't win in a system built on performance, He left, not with anger, but with wisdom. He no longer argues, no longer convinces. He just moves. Moves with clarity, moves with purpose, moves with peace. They say men like him are hard to reach, distant, unbothered, but that's not true. He's just done being accessed by people who don't knock with respect. He doesn't hate love, he just refuses to settle for the version that hurts more than it heals. So if you see him quiet, alone, content, don't pity him. Don't ask what went wrong. Ask what went right. Ask what it took for him to finally realize he was never missing anything except himself. If you've ever walked away to protect your peace, if you've ever sat in silence and realized it's stronger than chaos, you're not broken. You're building. Leave a comment below. It's not loneliness, it's freedom.